Yeah.
Looking over it early, and I'm like, you're creepy.
Oh, okay. Did they put our pictures up? I didn't know. I sent it to the HCA 38 beautiful email.
You emailed it to them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, not necessarily local. I'm from a community organization, but I kind of operate for 5 boroughs in California. We're fairly new. I'm not new, so we're new. And air so I am essentially the front living the housing. Yeah, yeah. It can be good. Tampa, and also Tampa's all that legal services are very good. And so we also did like help the housing voucher, but they're back up for like 8 weeks. And so there's some centralized yeah, probably. I did do, yeah, but
Oh, here? Hi.
Maybe not all time fine, but yeah, they're lawyers.
There we go.
I used to be in active housing for aged people. I see it.
And then you continue to find I was training after like 5 years. Yeah, you can re-apply. But it's only if you get accepted, you can only apply every 5 years. But according to sometimes there's
That is such a fancy tripod.
I didn't do it. It was Jessica.
Oh, okay. Suppose someone widgets the table.
I hope not. But I'm gonna be watching it on my phone.
You
so.
told them all not to move.
Please don't move.
Oh, yeah.
So good morning, ladies. I notice everybody head is down, so I'm just unwell. So I'm Francisco Leopold. Everybody call me Fran. I'm Francisco. Everybody call me Fran. I'm from the New York City Commission on Human Rights.
I'm Salma. I'm with United Way of New York City. We're advocacy and government relations team.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm Salma. I'm with United Way of New York City.
My name is Rima. I'm with Chaya CDC. We do tenant organizing in Queens, and I know Russell.
Oh, you know
He used to
Russell?
work at Chaya.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
From your Queens office.
Okay. Yeah, my work. We are one of the administrative officers for the mayor's office. So what we do, we educate persons in the community, and we work with several organizations as well as city agencies to educate persons as to what their rights are under the New York City law when it comes to housing, unemployment, and public accommodation. So persons who, this forum more or less is for persons who have been discriminated against, their rights have been violated when it comes to housing. Yeah, a lot. Yeah, when it comes to vouchers, yeah, it is a big deal because a lot of persons, especially persons who are at shelters, you know, sometimes you find that the program directors, the housing program managers, they don't really do the work that they're supposed to do to represent them. So a lot of persons who are looking for housing, they are not equipped with the information needed to really go out there on their own, because most of the time what they do, they will just, if they know you have an apartment for rent, they will just call you and say, hey, Miss Jones, I have a voucher and I know that you have an apartment, this is available. What's the first thing you're going to say to them? Anytime they put that first on the table, that I have a voucher, I know that I heard that you have an apartment for rent, is it available? The first thing that they will hear, I'm so sorry, the apartment is not available. So I realized, because I work very closely with the electives, with the council members and the senators and the assembly members, because a lot of the residents don't go to those offices to complain. And it's one thing I always let them know. Tell the people. And I think somebody said illegal aid, right? Yeah. Always let the people know. Don't call and say I have a voucher. You have to call first and say, Mr. Brown, Miss Jones, I'm aware that you have an apartment for rent. Is it available? You will say yes or no. And if it's available, then you set an appointment. You go, you sit, and you let them know, hey, I am interested in the apartment. Where do we go from here? The owner of the apartment will say, okay, we can sit down, let's start doing the paperwork and everything. And as they go down the line and they get to the point where money comes to play, and they said, okay, where you work, let me see your finances. And then you said, well, anyway, I have a voucher, and then Section 8 or whoever is paying 60% or 80% of the rent, and I'll be paying either 20% or 40%. This is the voucher. And Mr. Jones or whoever it is, Mr. Brown says, I am so sorry, but I have an appointment. Can we reschedule for next week? And you said, okay, we can schedule for next week. And when next week comes, whoever it is will say, I am so sorry, but I thought the apartment was available, but it's not. It's gone. Yeah, then they have to call us. Because it was available, but then all of a sudden that the voucher was presented, it's not available anymore. So it's a no-no. So then we'll start investigating. So for that person, we would investigate.
Sorry, who would get fined? The broker or the landlord?
the landlord. As a matter of fact, all of them have to come to a training. So when we do the investigation, if they have multiple dwelling places, we investigate and make sure that it's not something that have been happening. But then that person whom we are really representing will get some sort of compensation. So some of them get $10,000, $15,000. So they, because of for the trouble and everything, they pay them, they compensate them. So and then if they do have another apartment in a different building, they have to give them that apartment. They have to rent them that apartment. So they will get compensated. They get the apartment. The landlord and whoever works for he or she have to come to us to do a training and then also pay us a civil penalty. So, yeah.
What about housing discrimination people who have records?
Oh, that is a big thing. So for us, we have over 27 areas of discrimination. We cover 27 different categories of discrimination. So it could be religion, it could be criminal records, race, creed, immigration status. And regardless of your immigration status or your criminal record, it cannot refuse to rent your apartment. Regardless of your immigration status or your religion or your job, because a lot of landlords, they refuse to rent to police officers and attorneys based on the job that you do, because they know that you're aware, you know the law, and then you could fight with them. Because most times they take advantage, you know the law, but they pretend like they don't know, you know, and they take advantage, you know. So hence the reason why I take it on my own to really go to the communities where I know that the persons are, they are not aware of what their rights are. Persons who are in apartment shelters, they are more concentrated to get out, to get a home, to get food on the table, to feed the kids. They are not thinking of going out there and finding out what the law is. They need somebody to come to them, to help them. So I worked inside. I used to work at the Commission and the Law Enforcement Bureau, which is LEB. So I worked with over 50-something agents and attorneys.
It's great when we don't have enough chairs and we filled up the room. We're trying to get some more chairs in here, but glad to see folks here today. Welcome to Housing Court's annual conference, which we've been holding for many a decade. My name is Larry Wood. I serve as the board of directors here at Housing Court Answers. And just to share some things, I've been at Goddard Riverside. I started there as a tenant organizer, and then I served as director of advocacy and organizing. I started in January of 1987. I got involved with what was Citywide Task Force in Housing Court back in 1984 after Eleanor Bumpers was killed by the police, Officer Sullivan, if people remember. The Eleanor Bumpers Justice Campaign called for a coalition for moratorium on evictions. At that point in time, I was organizing homesteaders and squatters, so evictions were a big concern, and made us really nervous. And that particular eviction resulted in Eleanor Bumpers being killed by the police. It was a horrific incident that really turned the city on edge. Officer Sullivan was there because she was behind in her rent by a few months, and she was deemed emotionally disturbed, so a SWAT team was there to evict her. The first shot took off her hand, supposedly held a gun, a knife, and the second shot got her in the chest. The police had a huge rally to defend Officer Sullivan. He was acquitted. But it was horrific that he was there to begin with. We were guilty as a city for putting the police at an eviction when we should have given her one shot, helped her out, kept her housed. But that was a wake-up for a lot of activists in the city. And people got involved with Housing Court. I joined the board in 1990. I was a staff member at the Law Project, the SRO Law Project, and became board president in 93. So it's been a long stint for a lot of us on the board and organizationally. And we used to start our annual conferences with kind of an icebreaker, where people can identify with one another and meet each other. We've grown much too big for that. So I kind of do a modification of it. So if it applies to you, I want you to raise your hand and to look around to see who else is from the same borough. Who else is a tenant, organizer, who else is a lawyer. So bear with me and raise your hand when it's time. So who's from Manhattan? Okay, good turnout. From the Bronx? Okay, Queens? Okay, Staten Island? Staten Island's in the house? All right? All right? And now who we get? Brooklyn, oh yeah, Brooklyn. My borough of birth. Brooklyn is in the house, my favorite. Okay. All right, how many tenants, how many people here are tenants? A tenant, are you a tenant or a co-op owner? Not everybody's a tenant. How many people are landlord? You got any landlords in this today? Co-op condo owners. Co-op condo. A few. How about anybody live in social housing? Housing we want for the future. Something we can actually afford to live. Not yet. We need more people in social housing because we need to develop more social housing. Okay. How many people are lawyers? Yes. How many people are organizers? Oh, that's me. Elected officials, or work for an elected official? Councilman Sanchez. Oh. Students? Students in the house? Yeah, some students.
They're not raising their hands very
Oh, I
much.
see that. Some students over here. And then anybody just a tenant, unaffiliated? Here, does it want to learn? Okay. GAO. Okay. How many people have actually witnessed an eviction? Been at a site of an eviction? Been in an eviction, seen eviction? Far too many, yes. How many people have ever advised or tried to console somebody going to house in court without a lawyer? Yeah, far too many of us. All right, a little fun one. How many people like the Yankees? How many people are Met fans? How many people are neither? Honestly, my two favorite teams are the Mets and the Rays playing the Yankees. That's those Yankee fans, okay. That's a little bit of a nice break. I do hope during lunch you get to socialize, meet some other folks, and make connections here. So today is, we're going to be marking the 50th anniversary of Housing Court. We have a really interesting panel which will cover some history, but really more focus on the future. And in 1974, when Housing Court formed, it was because New York City was really in an abysmal state. You know, we had just come out of almost being bankrupt. Housing conditions were really abysmal. The subways were really decorated with graffiti. It was a really different kind of city back then. And the horrible state of our housing, the federal government was actually threatening to withhold federal funds unless New York City did something meaningful about code enforcement. And it led to the formation of Housing Court. And if you can actually imagine it, housing and tenant activists actually celebrated the creation of Housing Court. It was felt the adjudication of the collection of rent wed with warrant of habitability and code violations and defenses. That was our goal. We wanted that. And we wanted a quick summary proceedings where justice could be melted out and we could get building repairs done. 10 years later, we were horrified to see what was created. There was a conference in around 1984. And out of that conference, different task forces on housing court were created beginning in the Bronx, which eventually led to the citywide task force on housing court. And we realized that rather than being a forum for justice, it really became a rent collection agency for landlords and an eviction mill, the worst that we could have imagined. And out of these task forces, we realized we had to fight for reforming housing court to live up to its original mandate. Part of that was trying to level the playing field for those pro se litigants. So we started staffing information tables in each of the 5 boroughs, just with volunteers from the coalition that was the citywide task force in housing court. And then we documented what we were seeing in court. And documentation and coming up with evidence led to the 5-minute justice report. 5-minute justice referred to the average time a case was actually before a judge. Very few cases ever went to trial. 5 minutes was about the time that a judge would, read the stipulation that a tenant was badgered into agreeing to out in the hallway. And again, it was not living up to its mandate. So we started with the information sheets, what to look out for, terms to look out for in the stipulation, how to handle a non-pay. We came up with a reform agenda and called for a right to counsel in housing court back in 1985. We called for clean hands, meant there should not be code impairing violations in the apartment before you can bring an eviction case. Clean up your building first, clean hands before you bring any court proceedings. And we advocated for plain language and getting all the complicated legal forms into plain language and appropriate languages so tenants can understand the process and how to defend themselves. So we started providing services and a fierce reform agenda. 20 years later, citywide task force and housing court formed. And I forgot over in my bag, I have a t-shirt, which I'm gonna pull out later. It was Unhappy Birthday, celebrating the 20th anniversary of Housing Court. And Housing Court was the victim itself. They never had enough staff. They had the worst facilities around. So the courts were, court offices, the personnel, the judges were all overworked, as well as the people having to come into court. So our study and many studies since then continue to champion right to counsel. Then CASA, and again up in the Bronx, revived the Right to Counsel Coalition. The stars aligned during the de Blasio administration, and we got Right to Counsel to pass. It was an amazing victory, and here we are with Right to Counsel in crisis. We just celebrated the 50th anniversary of Housing Court a little while ago, and similar to 30 years ago, people were disrupting court, marching around, chanting, and bringing attention to what was happening and not happening in housing court, what needed to be corrected. In some ways, I think, has anything changed? Have we made any difference over the years? And the answer is yes. I'd much rather have a right to counsel that's not working than not having a right to counsel at all. That's a huge victory. We want to fulfill the victory and make sure everybody actually has counsel. We have stronger rent laws. We have rent subsidy programs that never existed. We have one-shots and rent arrears to help people get back on their feet, provided they can afford the rent in the future. So there have been many gains, but we still have a long way to go. And what's next? We're going to be hearing about that in the panel. If we really fulfill right to counsel, everybody has a lawyer. What good is a lawyer if you don't have rights to stay in your apartment? We need good cause eviction. That's also what's next. We also have to end economic evictions. We have to have rent subsidy programs that cover everyone, not a limited pool. So I think my vision for the future is ending economic evictions in housing court, putting stop in them. They should not exist. So we're going to need good cause, we need rent subsidies, we're going to need a lot of work done. And these are difficult times, so it's hard to keep your eyes on the prize and keep fighting. I know, watching 5 minutes of news this morning, I just wanted to put my head under the pillow in horror and pain. But that wasn't going to work. I realized I got to get up, get my index cards ready, and get down here and inspire people to keep fighting. And if you know me, I don't end without a call and response, because I'm an organizer. So when I say, what do we want? You say lawyers. I say, when do we want them? You say now. You don't do enough shout outs to lawyers. What do we want? Lawyers. When do we want it? Now. A little louder. What do we want? Lawyers. When do we want it? Now. What? Lawyers. When? Now. Let's try it with good cause. What do we want? Good cause. When do we want it now, right? What do we want? Good cause. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Good cause. When do we want it? Now. What? Good cause. When? Now. Okay. And human services workers around the city, at Garden, Riverside, and elsewhere, we want just pay. Lawyers need just pay. Paralegals just pay. Daycare workers need just pay. Social workers, GALs, we all need just pay. And if you go to the Human Services Council website right now, you can send an email to the administration and the mayor to stop those cuts to the city agencies and demand just pay. I'm gonna say, what do we want? You say just pay, I'm gonna say just, all right, that's good. I say just, you say pay, that's the change. Just pay! Just pay! Just pay! Okay, and we're just gonna end with justice now and we pass it on to what do we want? Justice? When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! What? Justice! When? Now! Thank you. I'm introducing you to Jenny Laurie, who serves as Executive Director of Human Housing Finances. Give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Larry. Larry's always our favorite rabble-rouser, we like to use that term. Thank you, everyone, for coming to our 2023 annual conference. I'm really excited to see the room so full. We did a half-day conference last year, and it was half empty. This is our first full-day fully in-person event since 2019. And we're all really excited to be here. I want to repeat some of the things that Larry said, that this is the 50th anniversary of Housing Court, but we are not celebrating it. I realize I just put my papers on this live screen. Excuse me. That's still, yeah. We're not celebrating it, but we are celebrating the work that we do at Housing Court Answers. We're celebrating the work that you all do. The tenant side lawyers, the tenant organizers. We don't celebrate the landlord side lawyers, of course.
With the shirt.
Right, there we go.
The unhappy birthday to New York City's Housing Code, 20 years of 5-minute justice is no justice at all.
It looks a little small.
I was
for you.
smaller 30 years ago.
Very nice. Yeah, so it's not a birthday party, it's not a celebration. It's a sort of a look, we're trying to do a look back, and we're trying to celebrate the work that people do. As Larry described, the lawyers who represent tenants in housing court cases, the social workers, the community organizers, the tenant organizers, all the people who work to stop evictions, to stabilize housing for folks. And we also want to celebrate our allies in City Hall and in Albany who sort of respond to the tenant movement by passing good, strong tenant regulations and laws, and who do a fair budget for the housing that New Yorkers need. We all know that during the pandemic, I'm sure most of you worked through it, at the jobs maybe that you have now, evictions slowed to absolutely zero. And as someone said recently at another conference, the world did not fall apart. It's still here and it's back, in full force. By the world, I mean the real estate world, the landlord's world. Until the passage of Right to Counsel in 2017, about 10% or fewer tenants had lawyers when they went to housing court in an eviction case, and almost all landlords had legal representation. There was an expose in the New York Times in 2018 that really detailed the way that big real estate companies were targeting rent-regulated tenants in buildings and emptying them by filing baseless cases over and over against them in housing court, and basically evicting the rent-regulated tenants so they could convert the buildings to market rate housing. Right to Counsel was stopping all of that kind of behavior. And during the pandemic, of course, Right to Counsel was in effect. People had lawyers. Most tenants who did get taken to housing court during the pandemic shut down, had legal representation. But since the court has reopened and since the moratorium has expired, things have gone back to the way they were prior to Right to Counsel and prior to the pandemic. The majority of tenants in New York City now are rent burdened. You're going to hear more about this on the panel. 1/3 of New York City renters pay more than 50% of their income for rent. Obviously, those folks are one paycheck away or even less from housing court. The OCA data that was recently released shows that non-payment filings and calendared cases had more than doubled by the end of 2022 compared to 2021. And if you look at 2023 numbers, they're pretty frightening. They're heading back up to the way they were prior to the pandemic. So we're not celebrating the 50th anniversary of Housing Court. It's not a happy birthday, but it is a celebration of all of you. Thank you so much for coming today, and I hope you enjoy this conference. I hope you get to talk to each other and that you learn something from our panelists. I'm just going to talk a little bit about logistics. Some of you will notice you have these QR codes on the table. So if you want to put in a question for the panelists later, you should get to this part of our website where you put in a question. If you want to see the program, there's a QR code for that as well. And if you want to just get to, you can also see a lot of the things up here on our main screen. I want to thank Fordham Law School for hosting us today. This is a beautiful facility, and we're really grateful to them for they donate this space to us for our conference, and so all of us can come here and share our knowledge and, as Larry says, get inspired for the fight that we're in. So thank you so much to Fordham Law School. I also want to thank the Housing Court Answers Board of Directors. A few of the folks are here today, and a few of them are part of the program, so you'll meet them in a little bit. And then most important, I want to thank the Housing Court Answers staff who put together this conference, did all the work for this conference at the same time that they were answering the hotline and working at our information tables and putting together our training. So please. So now I'm going to introduce Judith Goldner, who's going to come up and present our Housing Justice Award. We're doing 2 this year. One this morning to Councilmember Sanchez, who's a real hero of ours and of mine. And then in the middle of the day, over lunch, we're going to present an award to one of our staff members, who you'll hear a lot more about later. So Judith Goldner is the attorney in charge of the Legal Aid Society Civil Law Reform Unit. She is, I just read this, she is the Legal Aid Society's 2023 Orison Martin Memorial Award honoree, which I think is a big deal. Yeah. And last year, I remember this, and this is the funniest thing that I ever read. City and State named her as one of the Real Estate Power 100. And that's, of course, because she's a big landlord on the side. It's really because she's an amazing advocate for tenants. She's a great board member for Housing Court Answers, and she's really protecting tenants' rights and pushing the envelope in Albany at City Hall. And she's going to present our award to Councilmember Sanchez. So hand over. You're not supposed to touch this thing. All right, we'll listen.
Thank you, Jenny. That was very nice. So great to see so many of you in person who I haven't been able to see in person for a long time, and I look forward to meeting many of you who I haven't met before, but it's great to all be together. I have the privilege of giving our Housing Justice Award to Councilmember Sanchez, and I volunteered to do this because I want to say to you, she's really a rising star in our movement. And she, when I asked, I have things I want to say about her, but when I asked other folks about her, really that's what they took away. That's what they said to me. This is someone who, is deeply committed to the Bronx, but also in her position as chair of the City Council Housing Committee has really moved important legislation for us, but also really deeply knows the work that we do day in and day out. And we all know that we have other allies, but not all of them are like that, right? And I think that's partly because Councilmember Sanchez came out of work that we do every day, like working at the Regional Planning Association. I know gave her a deep understanding of the housing problems that New Yorkers face day in and day out. And the same is true for her work at the Pratt Center, and those are all before, she became a council member. As the chair of the Housing Committee, she's been a huge ally for us, trying to move our housing agenda in Albany on both good cause, and she's been working really hard with us as a partner to try and get good cause done, because she knows what a game changer would be for tenants in housing court, and what a big difference it could make. And what an important racial justice issue it is, because so many, I hope you all read this very sad story in the Times about how African American women in particular are so much more likely to be evicted, and that has implications not just for them, but for their children, and what that means for us as a society, and how we have to change that order. But we all know there are sort of two parts to that, right? Like, I sort of see what we need in housing court as a stool, like that has 3 legs, right? So we need good cause, because we need protections for tenants, so that every tenant can't be evicted unless they have a good reason. We need attorneys, we were talking about that. We need attorneys to make sure that every tenant has representation in housing court, so you can defend the rights you have. And we need benefits to help people pay the rent moving forward. So we have those 3 parts, which are falling apart. And of course, that's one of the really horrifying things that we're seeing lately in our courts. But Councilmember Sanchez really knows this, and that's why she has sponsored and passed again over the mayor's veto, a bill to expand city FEPS to everyone. And I probably don't need to tell you all how groundbreaking that would be for us, for our plans for tenants in housing court, what that would mean if people at risk of eviction could get city FEPS to stop their eviction. What that would mean as a city, that we knew that people could stay in their homes and be stably housed, and homeless folks in our shelter system could move out and find housing. It would be a totally different city than the one we have all experienced for far too long. And it goes into effect on January 8th, and I couldn't be more excited to move this forward. But really none of this would have happened without Councilmember Sanchez looking at this problem that we've known about for so long and saying, we've got to change that, we've got to do something different. So I am so proud to present her with this 2023 Housing Justice Award, and please.
Fancy, y'all. Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. This is, I don't know where to start. I mean, I started, well, I know where to start. I started my career in housing policy. I guess I would date it to 2010 when I came out of college and was working in District 14 in the council. And I would refer so many folks to Housing Court Answers, and just the way that over the past 13 years, that's how math works, the last 13 years, to see the way that all of the different pieces of the housing movement in the city of New York work together, both in ways that aren't quantifiable or tangible in many respects, and places like this where folks come together and you fight together and you plan together, and we win together. So thank you so much, Judith, for your partnership. Thank you to everybody in this room for the work that you do. I just wanted to kind of start by, acknowledging that I was a constituent caseworker, so case by case, call by call, client by client. It can sometimes become easy to lose track of the big picture, right? Of the historic, inequities that our work is steeped in, right? The massive inequality in our city that comes from being born in many places or come to a country and live in a country that is founded on slave labor, that is founded on indentured servitude, that is founded on stolen land, right? All of these realities come together and bubble up for us every single day as we help and try to empower individuals who were never meant to be empowered in our country and in our city, right? And that looks like fighting for them in housing court, trying on the legislative front and on the budgetary front to ensure that we have the resources available. We're not there yet, but we at least have some of the laws in place. But it looks like fighting together for them, and it looks like, making sure that folks can speak with their own voice and be supported in doing so. And so I'm just so proud of what we accomplished together. As Judith has said, and as we open this conference saying, yes, there's a lot more work to do, but having some of the laws on the books is such an important start. And we need many more, right? We need good cause. We need the Housing Access Voucher Program, the expansion of the HEFs of the state, right? We need a new version of a new way of subsidizing new housing starts in the city of New York, not 421A, not just a giveaway to the development community, but one that actually gets us to the outcomes that we need. There's so much work to do. And as housing chair in the New York City Council, I'm often asked, like, how do we do it? How do we solve housing? And the answer is a very long and sub-bulleted essay, right, with many sections of it. But the reality is that we all work together, we all have different roles to play, and we're all doing that. So thank you for doing the work that you do, for supporting me, literally me, as Judith knows, and I always want to mention this, but when I was coming up, when I was a little girl, we faced eviction over at 1905 Andrews Avenue, where we still live nearby. And my mother went to the Legal Aid Society and sought help and prevented our eviction, and worked together, with other tenants to support them. And so the connection is very personal for me. You served and helped my family, and you continue to do that to this day. So thank you for the work that you do. Councilmember Abreu, I see you, former housing attorney on the city council, waving in the back. It's such an honor to be with you all and to serve with such a great body. And thank you. Thank you so much.
We'll start the panel now if the panelists can come up. I know Judge Stoller is running late, so I'll wait in the lobby and see. Perfect timing, Andy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about the, Debbie suggested we pull the table forward. Are you all okay there? You're not getting it, but okay, great. As I said before, I think Judge Stoller's on his way, but is running a little bit late. This panel will run until 1 o'clock. We'll do lunch between 1 and 2. We'll be out there, but of course we'll go out there and there isn't here. We'll have a little bit more talking over lunch. And then there are workshops in the afternoon. if you're a lawyer and you want to do the continuing legal education credited workshop, that will be across the hall in Bateman, which is a classroom setup. If you want that credit, you have to have registered by Friday, and you should have gotten an email at 5 o'clock on Friday telling you you're registered for that and you're all set. There's a QR code that will be on the table outside the room, so you can use your phone to check in on that. If you want to just go to the presentation, you're not a lawyer and you don't want the credit, that's fine too. The topic there is practical techniques for working with high needs clients and clients with diminished capacity. So that's across the room, across the lounge in the Bateman room. And then stay here for workshops for advocates. There will be 6, 7 workshops, and they'll be at this table in what we call speed dating format. So there'll be a presenter at each table. You go and sit at the one you want. Every 20 minutes they'll shift, so they'll repeat the workshops 4 times. Confusing, I know. And then everyone, please, at 4 o'clock we're doing a reception, so please stay and do some. I was hoping that if I kept talking, Judge Stoller would show up. It's not working. All right, so I'm going to hand over. Luis Enriquez is on our board of directors, which is his most important job, but he's the housing litigation director for Legal Services NYC Manhattan Legal Services. Is my getting that close enough?
I'll correct that.
Okay, great. So, please welcome Luis to the